Quantum leaders, the innovator. The preconscious flow of reality. The innovator's natural style, imaginative, exploratory, and spontaneously creative, often appears unstructured, yet their greatest insights don't arrive through logic. They emerge through the preconscious field. Subtle sensations, intuitive pulses, energetic whispers that precede language and form. The innovator doesn't just think, they sense. Their most catalytic creations are born not from deliberate planning, but from responding to signals that arise before the conscious mind has caught up. The preconscious is their creative source, and when honored, it becomes the truest guide to what wants to be born through them. With a motivation direction of towards, the innovator is propelled into the future. But their most potent visions often begin as formless fragments, a dream residue, a fleeting image, a feeling of something waiting. These aren't distractions. They are preconscious signals of emergence. When the innovator creates space to follow these fragments, without pressure, they enter a slipstream of generative awareness. Their job isn't to make sense immediately. It's to listen first. Their attention focus on others allows them to sense the needs and moods of people around them. But the preconscious reveals those signals before they are spoken. A subtle shift in a room, a change in the field, a colleague's eyes lighting up at the mention of an unfinished idea. Innovators who slow down just enough to catch these flickers begin designing from resonance, not assumption. They create what's not yet said, but already wanted. With an external frame of reference, the innovator looks outward for inspiration and confirmation. But in the preconscious layer, input is felt, not seen. A tweet becomes a trigger. A color becomes a mood. A song becomes a blueprint. Innovators thrive when they allow this subliminal data to guide their next direction, not through analysis, but through energetic recognition. This is not random. It's pattern sensing beyond words. Their options-based operational style is ideal for tracking the preconscious. They don't need immediate answers. They follow threads. The preconscious thrives in that space. It speaks in incomplete phrases, flashes of insight, and gut feelings. When the innovator stops demanding clarity too early, they become a receiver for high-fidelity future signals, ideas that haven't yet reached language. Their general viewpoint helps them sense meaning across domains. But the preconscious often speaks sideways, through metaphor, misalignment, or anomaly, a strange coincidence, a repeated symbol, an unrelated conversation that feels like confirmation. Innovators who pay attention to these subtle echoes begin decoding guidance that logic can't access. This makes their ideas feel timely, obvious, or even faded because they were sensed before they were formed. With a proximity work preference, they draw a creative charge from shared space. The preconscious field intensifies in relational energy, group coherence, ambient emotion, the unspoken desire in a brainstorming session. Innovators become more precise when they learn to feel into what isn't said, what the group almost knows but hasn't yet named. They bring form to what's still embryonic in the collective. Their emotional engagement is associated. They are the idea in early creation. This immersion opens access to the preconscious, where emotions serve as signals. A jolt of enthusiasm, a strange melancholy, an unexplained resistance. These aren't obstacles, they're messages. When innovators stop managing emotions and start listening to them, they begin designing from truth, not just excitement. As mismatchers, they catch what doesn't fit. But the preconscious often shows up through small oddities, an image that won't leave, a phrase that keeps returning, a design element that doesn't quite work but points elsewhere. Instead of discarding, innovators learn to track the anomaly. The misfit becomes the portal. The glitch becomes the guide. With an in-time orientation, they act quickly. But the preconscious isn't always urgent. It's early, a whisper before the signal, a shadow before the form. Innovators grow when they differentiate adrenaline from attunement. Is this idea fast, or is it ripe? When they follow timing based on readiness rather than reaction, their creations land with uncanny precision. And with a primary drive of activity, they love to move, make, and manifest. But not every creative surge is a green light. Sometimes, the body wants to move before the mind is ready. The idea wants to speak before the field is open. The innovator evolves when they create space for stillness, not as absence, but as invitation. In those pauses, the next wave of insight arises from nowhere and carries everything. In this frequency, the innovator is no longer just a thinker or doer. They become a listener to the field, a vessel for emergent form. Their role is not to hunt for ideas, but to catch what's already arriving. When they learn to trust the unspoken, the faint, and the seemingly random, their work begins to echo the future. They stop trying to be original. They simply become exquisitely attuned to what's coming and make it real before anyone else can name it. Quantum leaders, the innovator, you are the tipping point. The innovator's natural style, restless, inventive, and future-facing, often positions them as the spark that begins, not the force that completes. Yet under this quantum principle, their influence is redefined. They are the tipping point. Not because they always finish the project, but because their presence shifts the system. One idea dropped at the right moment, one unconventional move, one bold suggestion that breaks a loop or inspires momentum. This is what tips a field. Innovation doesn't require consensus. It requires ignition. And the innovator is the ignition. With a motivation direction of towards, the innovator is naturally pulled toward what could be. But in quantum systems, forward motion often waits for a catalyst. When the innovator fully embodies their role, not just imagining the next step, but embodying the shift, they spark movement. Their energy creates inflection. What felt stuck becomes possible. What seemed unreachable becomes inevitable. The system responds not just to their ideas, but to their decision to believe in those ideas enough to act. Their attention focus on others allows them to sense what's emerging in the collective. But sensing alone doesn't shift the timeline. When the innovator speaks what others haven't yet admitted, when they create what others only sensed, they become the bridge between subconscious longing and conscious change. They give language, image, and design to what was waiting to be born. That translation becomes the tipping point. With an external frame of reference, they often hesitate, checking for resonance before offering their idea. But tipping points don't wait for permission. They require timing. When the innovator stops asking if it's welcome and starts sensing if it's ready, they begin moving in sync with the field. Their contribution no longer feels random or risky. It feels inevitable. The shift was coming. They just gave it shape. Their options-based operational style gives them many pathways, but tipping points require commitment. An unfinished draft doesn't shift the field. A half-suggested idea doesn't rewire the pattern. The moment the innovator chooses one form, one version, one clear channel, and sends it out, they become the pivot. The tipping point doesn't arise from dabbling. It arrives through declaration. Their general viewpoint gives them a macro vision of what's possible. But systems shift through specificity. When the innovator moves from pattern recognition into concrete form, from insight to interface, from metaphor to model, they collapse the potential into change. The tipping point isn't in seeing the whole. It's in touching one place clearly enough to shift everything else. With a proximity work preference, the innovator thrives in relational space. But in group dynamics, change waits for someone to speak what's on the edge. When they dare to say the unspoken, or share the strange idea nobody else is ready to name, they move the room. Others recalibrate. The conversation changes. The timeline accelerates. They weren't just contributing. They tipped the field. Their emotional engagement is associated. They're emotionally inside their work. That depth gives their offerings charge. But it's not their intensity that tips the system. It's their willingness to share it. When the innovator offers their vision vulnerably, with coherence, they don't just inspire, they shift permission. Others realize it's safe to be bold, to create, to imagine. They move because the innovator moved first. As mismatchers, they naturally see what's off. But true tipping points don't arise from critique, they arise from constructive inversion. When the innovator not only identifies what's misaligned, but offers a new path forward, the system tips from resistance to redesign. They don't just say, this doesn't work. They say, this could. That subtle reframe turns friction into momentum. Their in-time orientation lets them act in the moment. But timing is everything. The tipping point isn't just about content, it's about precision. The innovator learns to sense the moment when the system is soft enough to shift. They don't push, they pivot. A light touch at the right moment moves more than force ever could. And with the primary drive of activity, they often think they must do more to create impact. But the tipping point isn't always about effort. Sometimes it's a single prototype, a phrase, a sketch, a refusal, a name. The innovator becomes most powerful when they realize, I don't have to move the whole system. I just have to move first. In this space, the innovator becomes more than a generator of ideas. They become the initiator of new trajectories. The shift doesn't happen because they try harder. It happens because they align with the moment, with the message, with the emerging field. Their courage to offer the unfinished, the unproven, the untested at exactly the right moment is what begins the wave. The innovator is the tipping point, not because they wait for the right time, but because they sense it and act.